For more, let's welcome in former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Matthew, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you both.
All right, so President Trump's legal counsel doubling down on his Truth Social declaration, claiming a Fourth Amendment-related legal challenge against the DOJ is on the horizon, quote, very soon. What do you anticipate this may be?
Well, the Fourth Amendment prevents unreasonable searches and seizures, and I really expect that the Trump team is going to file a motion that alleges this was an unreasonable search. They're going to point to the passports being returned immediately as the overreach of the government in the search. And ultimately, I think they're going to seek a special master to review all of the evidence that was seized in order to determine whether or not the search warrant was narrowly tailored to obtain the information they were looking for. And I think it's going to be a very interesting argument. And ultimately, they'll probably get a more detailed inventory of what was taken during the raid. And then at the same time, you know, we may hear the government have to demonstrate some more evidence as the basis for the search, which could obviously give the Trump team a better idea as to exactly what this case is going to be about.
And the Fourth Amendment focusing on unreasonable searches and seizures, that keyword unreasonable there. You mentioned this situation with the passports. Can you break down what happened with the passports and why they're focusing on that component?
Well, because to prove an unreasonableness in the government's actions, you have to essentially prove an overreach, that they weren't entitled to grab what they grabbed. And in this case, we already know that they grabbed the passports, which they were not entitled to grab under the four corners of the search warrant. And, you know, my understanding is they also not only were entitled to, grab classified or other protected information, but they were able to grab the containers that it was in together with anything adjacent or around that. That seems a very broad application of, what is supposed to be a precise process that only the evidence sought is obtained. And in this case, the passports are exhibit number one as to the overbroad nature of the search that was conducted.
And let's switch to the FBI here, of course, under lots of criticism for becoming increasingly politicized, even though Merrick Garland says quite the opposite. Do you think Americans' trust overall has already eroded, or can the FBI do something to gain Americans' trust back?
Yeah, I think following the Russian collusion debacle, for over 2 years, and the special counsel and that whole series of investigations, I think the FBI, unfortunately, has lost some credibility, and it is, needs to be the premier law enforcement agency in the federal government. There's a lot of great men and women that work there, and I know many of them are frustrated. You see it with whistleblowers coming forward to my home state senator, Chuck Grassley, and Congressman Jim Jordan. At the same time, you look and what has happened or not happened, actually, in the Hunter Biden case, where for over 3 years, they've had the laptop and they've, put their thumb on the scale early in the process in October of 2020, suggesting that it was, disinformation that proved to be completely truthful. And then you compare and contrast that to what's happening now after the Mar-a-Lago search warrant being executed, and then ultimately the fallout of that. So I think, unfortunately for the Department of Justice, they're going to have to rise to the occasion. There is a heightened level of scrutiny now on them, and they're going to have to prove that they are above politics. And unfortunately, the American people have had too many examples where they appear to be doing just the opposite, which is playing politics.
Yeah. And speaking of the fallout from this, former President Trump, he wants his affidavit released. That West Palm Beach, that is magistrate judge, saying that portions should be unsealed. But as we know, we're still waiting to see what those redactions will be. That'll come by the end of the week. Do you think there's anything noteworthy left after it's altered?
Well, I don't. And I earlier this week compared what's going to be the ultimate result of that is to an Austin Kleon poem, which is, a guy that takes a newspaper and then finds a phrase in it by blacking out most of it. And so I don't think there's going to be ultimately much information. But, the interesting is going to be the give and take between the judge and the FBI. They've been asked to redact it by this coming Thursday. The judge is going to review that. Ultimately, the judge will decide what should or shouldn't be released, and then we'll have a series of appeals. Because remember, this is a magistrate judge. He's supervised by a district court, and the district court is ultimately has an appellate court sitting above it, which is all under the umbrella of the United States Supreme Court. So it could be weeks, if not a month or two, before the final affidavit with the redactions that are legal is disclosed to the American people.
All right, Attorney General, thanks so much for your insight and for joining us this morning. Great insight as always.
Have a great morning.
All right, and we have